Welcome to the Women and Wealth podcast with Esther Szabo. Esther is a respected leader in the field of personal financial advice with over 25 years of experience. After going through her own significant and challenging life-changing events, she overcame fear and self-doubt to launch her own successful advisory firm. Now Esther is ready to share her practical and personal experiences to help other women clear their hurdles and brave life's transitions. In this way, she inspires women to lead fulfilling and confident lives.
Hello and welcome to episode 2 with Esther Szabo from Gates Pass Advisors. On our last podcast, we got to know Esther personally and about her business. And today we're going to be talking about education. Esther's going to give us a kind of a background on her education and how it really has impacted the work that she does today. Hi, Esther. How are you?
I'm doing great, Eric. Thank you so much.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Can you go ahead and just start us off with a little bit of the history of the education that you have and how that helps you work with your clients today?
Sure. It's a long road. It started with an AA, or Associates of Arts degree in social services. I started college late, if you remember from the first podcast, because there really wasn't enough in family finances or personal desire to do any more school. I thought I'd never do any more school. And it's funny looking back on it now, I really, really love the topic of education. So I started my AA when I was a little before my 22nd birthday, and I really was going to be a counselor. I thought that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah.
And I completed my AA in social services. I loved the education. I thought it was really practical and useful. And it's because counseling is so focused on listening, on really practicing listening to someone else and being with someone else, getting them where they are right now, and just being present with them rather than forcing a particular solution on someone that you think that would be good for them. It's really learning about allowing the client to lead and co-creating solutions and the journey together.
All right. Can you give us some examples of what that looks like when working with women in transition?
Yeah, I'd love to. I find it so helpful all the time. Oftentimes, women come in and they are professional women. I'm thinking of one specifically. A professional woman, she has an active practice herself. She is now a single mom and very intelligent, but it's not an intelligence issue in transition. There's a lot of stuff that one has to deal with kind of all of a sudden. And it's not unusual that perhaps because people live such busy lives now that they may have neglected different things like changing IRA beneficiaries or figuring out how much they're spending each month. And then all of a sudden, there's a huge pile of practical work that needs to be done. And one doesn't need so much about the technical aspects about balance sheets and net worth statements and projections. There's certainly a part where that's really important to help a client put their situation in some context and help guide in terms of these are the priorities right now. These others we'll track, but we can let them go for now. And listening to a client and being present with them to go at the pace that they're able to is so critical for helping them sort of see the shoulders go down. This client that I'm thinking of has come in on more than one occasion and just been just in that place of overwhelm. And so listening to her and just feeding back what I'm hearing, checking for what she needs, what's the right pacing, setting that game plan together has just really helped her navigate through this piece by piece.
Okay.
So with this client, there can be, and with any client, there can be roadblocks that come up. And often the difficulty or the roadblock is not so much that the client's angry or something like that. It's just they've reached a limit of how much they can take in. And it is going with that, as I said, at the client's pace so that we can go, oh, we've hit a point where this is as far as we can go. And I make agreements with clients in advance, as I did with this one. Do you need a break? Do you need to step out for a moment? We also set shorter meetings often. So we hit things at a shorter, a number of things at one meeting, but keep the focus on a very limited group of topics. And in all of this, it really helps build the relationship of who this client is, what they need. And it evolves over time. As someone moves through the transition, there's some parts of us that are always the same. We may always need in advance an agenda, or we may always need someone, of course, to stop and listen to us first. But that overwhelmed feeling does ease over time, so that the client knows when she's coming in that I can handle whatever they bring in. They don't need to mask it. They don't need to hide it. They don't need to put on a front. We can just be wherever they are and take care of the business at hand.
Esther, I would assume that with women in transition, there's an emotional aspect that is positive and negative that they're bringing to you, and that tells me that relationship building is incredibly important, and it's obviously helped you build a very successful practice. Can you give us an example of how this helps you with your teaching that you've done with your clients?
Yes, I absolutely can. Teaching is the same thing. I always say with prospective clients, and I remind existing clients, if there's one thing, there's more than one thing probably, but definitely one thing I can fault myself on is I really want my clients educated and informed about what is happening with their money at all times. And to that end, I can tend to overwhelm them with facts and information because I really want them to know. I'm very aware that on a typical basis, a client is in front of me 4 times a year, and the news is on every day. There's Twitter feeds, there's feeds onto the phone about what's happening with markets and the environment that can really make people anxious. So I like to fill in when we meet, and obviously I always say I'm available at any time if something comes up. But when we meet, I like to really approach, especially because all of that news is often on the investments. And their investments can be projected in a very emotionally inflammatory way. Either, oh my gosh, things are about to blow up and there's going to be a huge crash, or everything's great. And that's more what was happening during the tech bubble of the early 2000s. Everything's wonderful and people were scared they were going to miss out. And as a result, they overextended themselves in terms of risk. So the relationship building in the teaching comes by reviewing with clients what's going on in the markets, what's happening economically, and gearing that, though, to the extent to which the client is interested. Because sometimes clients just say, you've got that. I don't need to worry about that. But I really like to show them some of these overlying pieces, but go to the extent that they'd like. So recently, a client, I was reviewing different parts of the market environment, the recent quarter results, the types of securities that led, those that didn't, what's happening in the economy overall, what's happening with these trade wars and the different tax changes and all of that. And I just keep an eye on them. I go slowly, and then it allows the client, in this case, to ask questions because they need to know what's the context, or what does it mean exactly when you talk about the strong dollar versus a weak dollar. Help me create a linkage there so that I can bring it back to what it means for me in my portfolio. So the teaching of all that I've done in the past, which included, I did an internship during college on the Air Force Base in Tucson, Davis-Monthan. So one of the things that I really benefited from during my university education was I won an internship on the local Air Force Base in Tucson, Davis-Monthan. And the military has a great program. It's called the Personal Financial Management Program, PFMP. And it provides a lot of education and counseling for the incoming airmen, where it is their first job, so to speak, after high school, all the way up to staff, master sergeants, who at their end needed more information about investing and retirement planning. The younger ones, it's more about learning to balance a checkbook, keep a budget, manage credit. And I was part of a team that led a weekly training for these men and women, and also met one-on-one with issues on budgeting and credit and all of those things. And just leading those classes, I remember one of the the issues for the young airmen coming in was often they would be bouncing checks to the pizza delivery. And it would cause huge problems for them. And you have to be mission ready. And if your financial house is not in order, you're not mission ready. And their superiors will send them over to us. And we try and do an end around by doing all this education in advance. So one of my props was a big Domino's pizza box and saying, don't let this make you not mission ready. You have to learn how to navigate this. And as I went and graduated college, my first job out when I finished, I was 27. And I worked with a small business that was led by an ex-broker. It's actually no longer a small business, but at the time it was. He's done extremely well. And the focus at the time was to teach families and individuals how to create their own portfolio so that they're not so limited in terms of investment choices to those that are sold by a commission-based broker. A lot of that was teaching individuals how to analyze a stock, how to analyze a mutual fund, how do you build a portfolio with all of these things. And with that also, both of these things of being in front of people, teaching classes, really helped not only navigate how to present in a way that people could absorb the technical information, but also how to be responsive to the questions that came up, to really encourage a dialogue with the questions. I find with investments, often one of the roadblocks is people think they need to know how to do this. This does occur more with men, I find, but we should all know how to do this. We should all know how to do our own retirement planning. It's pretty easy, isn't it? You just figure out your cash, figure out your investments, put them together, and you're done.
If only.
Exactly. And the challenge is all the intricacies of this, changing tax laws, changing insurance products, changing market environments, and navigating this all together so that it really is about, let me meet you where you are and see how I can frame the response in such a way that it really helps build understanding and enlightenment around all of these issues of investments and planning.
Even though this was when you were 27, it sounds like this gave you a fantastic foundation for the work that you do now. But what are some other educational components that you have that help you work with your clients more effectively now?
Yeah, there's a couple things. And there's some technical that is ongoing, and then there's some ongoing financial relationship building through transition. I attained my certificate in financial planning. That's the CFP designation in 1995. And again, that's still a while ago, but it required a bachelor's degree, 3 years of experience, and to pass this horrible exam where first-timers pass rate as of last year was only about 2/3. But I did pass the first time. And not only do you have to pass the exam, which covers risk management, insurance, investments, estate planning, tax, there's continuing education that's required. And it actually is more that's required of us than for a lot of attorneys in the legal profession, that we need more continuing education. And so that continuing education is really critical because our field is ever changing. If you just pick one thing, pick interest rates and debt management, hugely different over the past 25, 26 years, just where interest rates were in the early 90s, where they are now, and what strategies you employ as a result. That has so many implications. So we really need to always be familiar with these changes, and the continuing education really allows us to get in front of things as we guide our clients. And the other piece that I'm engaged with, because I thought I'd never go back and do another designation again after completing my CFP. I love education. I do not like tests. I do not like deadlines. So there's always designations to have. You may have seen people's business cards that, their names are followed by lots and lots of letters.
Whole alphabet, yep.
Yes. And so a colleague of mine in the industry, when she heard me speak at a conference, approached me last year and said, I really recommend this to you because of who you work with. And it's a designation in financial transitions. And I looked into it, and I'm really, really have enjoyed the educational piece. And I'm sitting for my next exam in November. It's run by Susan Bradley, who coined the term sudden money and wrote a wonderful book about it. And it has great and effective tools for really supporting that conversation that I was mentioning earlier. When people feel in a fog about it, it's hard for anybody, let alone someone in transition, to say, well, what are your financial goals? It's like, what? I'm just trying to stay, ahead of the curve day to day. It's got great tools for that, and just really encouraging those conversations so that we can really build not just a relationship, but a strategy and plan that really fits with the client.
Okay, so taking all of this education into account, what can a woman who's in transition expect from you from the first time she meets you?
She can expect a woman who is engaged with her, who has her strategy in mind, not one that I am bringing to the table, someone who has 26 years of technical experience, educational experience, lots of on-the-job experience to really help support and navigate the direction of where she would like to go. But even more than that, really help articulate where she wants to go and where she wants to lead, and to also have the ability to be flexible. There is not one suit that fits all. There's not one portfolio that fits all, one strategy that fits all. One strategy really needs to be flexible to not only meet the changing market environment, but to navigate the changes of transition. Transition is one way in the first year, another in the second, another in the third, and it's evolving. So she can expect someone who is engaged, who loves what she does, is interested in them, wants to know them, and help really co-create that pathway forward.
Fantastic. It sounds like a lot of this is based on trust, and having that listening ear is so important. And I appreciate kind of focusing on that, and the teaching that you do. It sounds like it's kind of at their pace. Is that about right? I
would absolutely say it's at their pace, and it is a lot about listening. I love that phrase that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Yep. Esther, with all you've shared with us today, you've given us a very clear, succinct picture of how that education has really built that entire foundation for the business that you do today and the clients that you work with today. Do you have any closing thoughts for us about this?
I think one of the great things about this work is because of the connection to clients and the environment of working with things that are ever changing, taxes, markets, etc., that it is ongoing education, that there's always something to learn. Clients bring me things. They walk in and say, I had 2 clients 2 weeks ago who I met with them on the same day, who both brought me the same article and said, what is this about? And it's so stimulating for me that I can respond to that if I don't know in the moment, because, I just can't carry it all in my head all the time. It is wonderful to always I get fed by that too. I'm constantly learning and can share that with them as well. So I really appreciate that clients do bring me things to always research and look at and learn about as well, because one can't know it all. And I'm so grateful for the foundation that I have built over these years, because I pull from it every single day.
Absolutely. Clients bringing you things, articles to ask you about, that just absolutely speaks to the trust that you've built with them, and that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for listening to today's podcast, episode number 2 with Esther Szabo from Gates Pass Advisors. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Esther comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. It also makes it so much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at Gates Pass Advisors, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Women and Wealth podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you receive notifications of new podcasts as they become available. Check out the website at www.gatespassadvisors.com for more information. This content is developed from sources believed to be providing accurate information. The information in this material is not intended as tax or legal advice. Please consult legal or tax professionals for specific information regarding your individual situation. The opinions expressed and material provided are for general information and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security.